Hello. Well, I'm here with Sergio Barata, VP MEA from Netrodyne. And we're here to chat about the opportunities for AI to improve driver safety. So, Sergio, briefly, could you explain Netrodyne's background and its role in the fleet sector?
Yeah, hi. Happy to be here. So Netrodyne is a US-based company based out of San Diego, focused on AI video telematics, has really, I'd say, pioneered the technology, really driven the AI opportunity in fleet safety by bringing some of the benefits and some of the strengths of what you can do with AI today into that domain to make it easier to adopt and easier to use the technology going forward.
And how's that being applied in cab or in vehicle to improve driver behavior behind the wheel and improve driver safety, most importantly?
Yeah, so the technology is, I guess, in two parts. So there's the actual physical, camera technology that's in the vehicle. We use and leverage the AI at the edge, so in the cab, which allows us to then analyze 100% of the driving. And then that is, that information is fed into our platform, into our portal, which then has, a mobile app where we leverage that data and that experience that the drivers had in the vehicle through a coaching app, basically, which then drives adoption, drives kind of relevance of the experience that they've had with the technology, which is critical.
And how much of that coaching is actually in the moment? So the technology detects something that the driver ideally would stop doing and can react immediately.
Yeah, it's real time, and that is very important. The drivers will typically not necessarily be in favor of these technologies. Historically, it's something that they'll challenge. And if the experience is not real time and not accurate, that creates kind of annoyance and just, a challenge for the drivers just in terms of their own concentration. It's there to improve the experience, but actually detracts from it and becomes its own issue. So yeah, having real-time capability and measuring 100% or analyzing 100% of the driving experience is a critical part of how we help our customers position the technology with their employee groups, with their buy-in and their acceptance that the technology is accurate, it is relevant, and it is there to help them, basically.
So it's measuring 100% of the time, but how much of that data actually gets fed back to a fleet decision maker? Clearly, there are concerns about being overwhelmed by the volume of data that might come their way.
Yeah, it's a great point. So, in fact, it's a big part, a big value point in terms of how we leverage the AI. Maybe more even specifically in Europe, this is relevant, where data privacy, just kind of that personal interaction that the driver has to have with their line manager or safety manager. With our technology, we implement a virtual coaching approach. So you can sort of analyze the driver at 100% of what they're doing. You can provide a performance index. We call it a green score. Because we're measuring 100% of their driving, we can actually analyze the positive behavior as well. So we can bring, a contextual perspective and say, look, your driving looks pretty good. As a professional driver, you're doing a good job, but here is just a few elements that you need to, focus on, or you need to, change your behavior on. If the coaching app doesn't make or induce those improvements, then what you'll end up doing is, through exception, you'll be driving those drivers or those specific behaviors to, let's say, to a specific line manager or a specific person focused on that type of safety or performance.
And there will be a number of fleets whose drivers are parts of trades unions or workers' councils. What arguments can employers use to sell and promote this technology into their driver community?
I mean, fundamentally, it's there to make their work experience safer. We have measured our own customers, and we've measured, over big data point, that we're reducing accidents by 50% within the first 12 months, which is, that's a, pretty lofty ambition for any company, if you know what I mean. When you're having a conversation about workers' well-being and outcomes, positive outcomes at work, that's a credible conversation to have. But you are right. The data privacy and just the concerns around more technology, analyzing individuals and that sort of thing does play a role. And the capability of the technology and how you actually implement the AI is critical. And we've worked very carefully with a lot of our customers, to make sure that whatever those elements are, we can support the application of them.
Recently, mid-September, the new EU Data Act arrived. We already have GDPR. What are the data implications of the information that you're capturing in the cab for an employer?
Yeah, we will work closely with. Obviously, we're GDPR compliant, so we have to conform to all the let's say regional and in-country regulatory requirements. But I would say that we have to go further than that. We have to engage with the employees themselves, or the employers and the employees, to make sure that the technology is implemented in a balanced and fair way. And I think what we found is, in large enterprise organizations, fleet operators, the definition of the data privacy can sometimes be influenced by the union or the workers' councils. And so the definitions are not always exactly the same. There might be one implementation or approach for one company that's not entirely acceptable for another. And that's where you need the technology to be sophisticated, to really support those kind of applications or those deployments of them.
And there will be a number of fleets that have already installed some form of telematics system, and others who are starting to adopt vehicles that have connected technologies. How does this integrate with existing hardware or solutions that fleets already have?
Yeah, so the technology can be integrated with incumbent or existing solutions. That can be at a sort of API level, where the actual information, the portal, is actually integrated into, let's say, a third-party solution. And in some instances, if the end customer has actually deployed cameras already, we could even integrate the actual physical cameras into parts of the solution as well.
Okay. And obviously, every enterprise, every business is clearly focused on driver safety and vehicle safety, but they're also often looking for a business case, a financial business case. What are reasonable expectations for an improvement in your TCO and a return on the investment?
Yeah, we have seen that. So our predominant focus has always been on safety. That has been what's driven, the company's technology direction and commitment over the last 10 years. But we are also noting that, there are general returns on investment just in terms of fleet operation. If you drive in a more, let's say, specific way or professional way, then there are, positive outcomes in terms of fuel use, in terms of, just utilization and maintenance of the vehicles as well. So, the returns there are typically, single digit type opportunities. I think the driving, ROI business case factor is still very much the reduction of accidents, reduction of having the fleet disrupted, not available because of, those types of routines and repairs and that sort of stuff. And then ultimately just the safety and, the well-being of the employees as well. Yeah.
And when customers approach you, what's driving them?
I think they recognize that, in some instances, driving can be the most dangerous part of their job. They're delivering a specific service or capability in the field. They need to drive to get there. And there seems to be a real, concerted effort by large global companies as well as small companies who just can't be exposed to the risk and to the disruption that comes with, accidents and with, just anything that works like that. So I think first and foremost, safety is obviously driving, these decisions. And then it's just, operational standards and, improving the way they deliver the environment to the employees as well.
Perfect. Sergio, thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you. Cheers.